Hello, you abundant and beautiful and ever changing souls. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Welcome back to The Expanding Soul, a place where we explore growth, healing, and what it really means to become the best version of ourselves. Today, we're diving into how trauma actually changes your brain and body, and why you might feel the way you do even years later. If you've ever overreacted and thought, why did I do that? This episode will explain exactly why. Because the truth is, your brain might still be trying to protect you from something that's already over. I actually went through years of this myself before being diagnosed with POTS. I'll share more on that later in this episode. But first, let's understand what's actually happening in the brain. Lately, I've been really interested in learning anything I can to help myself heal physically and mentally. As I mentioned, I do have POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and I also have fibromyalgia. Mostly, I handle my symptoms really well. A lot of people in my life don't even know that I have these conditions. Or if they do know, they don't really know how much it affects me. The biggest challenge I'm facing right now because of them is the fatigue. It's not that, I'm tired, a nap sounds really nice kind of thing, though. It's that, literally not waking up in the morning kind of thing. Let me say I'm extremely grateful for the health I do have, though, and the support and the love around me. Because seriously, I could be in such a worse off situation. But I do get really frustrated with the fatigue sometimes. There's so many ideas running through my brain, so many things I want to do, and it feels like I can't ever quite get the energy I need to be able to do it all. But by changing my diet, my exercise routine, going to counseling and healing, the progress I've experienced is really phenomenal. I'm 4 times as strong as I was last year. I feel less symptoms from my conditions than last year, and I feel much more happiness. So this is evidence of growth and improvement, and by continuing to heal my mind, body, and soul, I really do believe that energy I've been craving will somehow reappear. There's growing research suggesting connections between trauma and the nervous system. So I wanted to do my own digging and learn what I could about how the nervous system is affected when a person experiences trauma. I guess I just want to know everything about how trauma impacts an individual and their mind and their body. So that's what this episode will be discussing, how trauma affects the mind and the body. And I do want to note here that I'm not a psychologist. I'm just a normal human trying to understand life. So if you do have trauma impacting your life, I'd just like to say that I see you. Your trauma does not define who you are, nor do the physical or mental symptoms you may experience due to those traumas. You are so worthy of love and healing and support. And if you do need it, please seek out the professional support that you deserve. As far as a trigger warning goes, I'm going to try to keep this geared more towards a scientific explanation. I'm not trying to bring up anything unpleasant for anyone. Most of us are somewhat aware of how trauma can affect the brain at this point. I'm definitely not an expert though, so I wanted to learn more about that. So we're going to start with the brain and go into the body after. So what is trauma? Trauma is some type of adverse event that triggers the brain's natural survival mechanisms. This event can be anything. It can be an emotional, physical, or psychological event that triggers our fight or flight survival response. According to the World Health Organization, 70% of the world's population has been exposed to a traumatic event at some point in their lifetime. Some people recover quickly within a year or so, and some people don't. Around 5% develop post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. I've also been seeing in recent years the idea of a complex post-traumatic stress disorder diagnosis for those that may have more complicated situations rather than just one traumatic event, like a prolonged series of traumatic events that happen throughout many years. It gives me hope to see scientists and mental health professionals breaking the problem of trauma and PTSD up more in depth, because there really are so many variations of how one can be affected by a trauma or multiple traumas. But even if you aren't diagnosed with PTSD or CPTSD, you can still have your brain change from the trauma you've experienced. There are 3 major parts of the brain that show changes in the brains with those of post-traumatic stress, and that's the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. The amygdala is what I like to call the brain's stay alive center. It's responsible for detecting threats and activating your fight or flight response. So when someone has experienced trauma, the amygdala can become overactive, meaning it's constantly scanning for danger and reacting, even when there isn't a real threat. That's where symptoms like hypervigilance, a racing heart, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, or sleep issues can come from. And when those reactions are that intense, the amygdala can actually override your more logical thinking. The prefrontal cortex is responsible for logical thinking, decision-making, and regulating emotions. In people with trauma, this part of the brain can be physically smaller in size and therefore less active, which makes it harder to stay grounded and think through situations calmly. So when you combine an overactive amygdala with a weakened prefrontal cortex, fear responses can take over, which is why emotional outbursts or intense reactions are so common. It's not that trauma patients intentionally want to respond inappropriately. It's that it is physically impossible for them to behave appropriately in certain situations. That is, it's impossible without utilizing the right healing tools. Now, the hippocampus is like the brain's vault. It's responsible for processing and storing memories and helping you distinguish between the past and the present. In trauma survivors, it can decrease in size and function, which can lead to memory issues or flashbacks. It's almost like the brain struggles to keep the past in the past, so certain triggers can make it feel like the event is happening all over again. And when all of this is happening in the brain, a person can go into survival mode without even realizing it. Think about it. Have you ever seen someone at school or at work or out in public that responded to something that wasn't a big deal in a very exaggerated or even aggressive nature? I can personally think of many times I've done this. Like, for instance, there was a time once when a coworker that was not my supervisor or my superior came to me and critiqued the job that I was doing and said I needed to do better. I got triggered because it felt like an accusation, and this person and I weren't exactly friends. So I went down the mental spiral of, why does she care? Is she just bringing this up to set me up where I do it again and she can go to my boss and tell him she tried to help me and get me in trouble? Or was she trying to get me fired? Did this bitch want me to not be able to pay my rent? Or feed my family? I knew she didn't like me. She doesn't even care if I have a place to live. You see how quickly that mental spiral can happen? I'm sure you can relate. We've all had moments like these. So my survival mode brain made me blow it way out of proportion, and I went off on her in a really angry and aggressive tone that wasn't appropriate for a collaborative work environment. When in reality, she had gotten written up for something similar to what I did and was just trying to protect me from the same thing. This mental dysfunction can make us do things we would never normally do. It can make us feel crazy and incapable and hopeless. If you've ever felt that way, I just want to say that you are not broken. You are not hopeless. You are not crazy. And it's absolutely not your fault. Your brain has just been changed due to the trauma you've experienced. But the good news is, just like how your brain changed due to the trauma, you can change it again through repetition and positive reinforcement. If you haven't already watched my episode about the science of manifestation, definitely go check that out. But long story short, there is a function in our brain called neuroplasticity, and it allows us to train our brain to form new neural pathways and connections. And we can use it to help us go from a place of suffering to a place of happiness. Okay, before we get into the effects trauma has on the body, I do want to go over some of the psychological symptoms of trauma. Symptoms are generally worse directly after the traumatic event, but in some cases, they can last for years and years after, especially in the cases of complex post-traumatic stress. You'll also see variations in symptoms day by day, typically with more stressful days displaying the most symptoms. These symptoms can also come out spontaneously when faced with some sort of stimuli that triggers the traumatic memory. Intrusive memories are one of the largest symptoms. There are several different ways this can occur, one of which is what some describe as a flashback, where you randomly relive the traumatic event in your mind. Intrusive memories can also be reoccurring thoughts about the event or about yourself because of the event, or even upsetting dreams and nightmares. Another fairly common symptom is avoidance. This is where you avoid the traumatic memory at all costs. You may try to not think or talk about it. You may stay away from a certain place or area where it occurred, or an activity that reminds you of the event. It could even be staying away from a person that reminds you of the event. It's that classic, if I don't think about it, it never happened kind of avoidance. And as an avoidance queen, let me just say, just do it. Just dive in and heal. I'm pretty sure avoidance is how I ended up numb, like I discussed in the previous episode. Another symptom of post-traumatic stress is negative changes in how the person thinks. They may have ongoing emotions like fear, guilt, or shame. They may be more prone to having negative thoughts about themselves or about others. They may have a hard time feeling positive emotions and have no interest in things or activities that they used to enjoy. This is also where memory problems can come into play. People with post-traumatic stress may struggle to create and remember new memories, or even struggle to remember the initial traumatic event in the first place. Now let's talk about all the symptoms that could come from the overactive amygdala. Some of these symptoms may be being easily startled or always on edge. They may show self-destructive behavior, such as using drugs or excessive drinking. The person may also have irritability and anger outbursts. So to the outside viewer, this can look like a much different situation. Let me put it into an example for clarity. Say your coworker, Hannah, has been a challenge to work with lately. She doesn't turn in any of her reports on time and always seems bitchy and makes cold comments. Like the other day, your coworker Frank had just got back from vacation with his family and was showing everyone some photos that they took. Hannah walked by and rolled her eyes and said loud enough where everyone heard her, "Must be fucking nice." So to everyone in the room, here's Hannah, who isn't even doing her job correctly, but is being pessimistic and rude and unsupportive to her teammate. But in reality, Hannah suffers from PTSD. Executive functioning is really, really difficult for her, and she can't even remember to get her reports in on time, and she feels like a complete failure. She's afraid she's going to lose her job over it, but can't afford to lose her job. She also wants nothing more than to be able to make more than enough money to just keep her family alive. She wants to take them on a real vacation, just once. Her kids are 6 and 9 and have never left the state once. She feels shame and guilt for that. But no matter how hard she tries, she can never get ahead. There's never quite enough. In Hannah's mind, Frank acts like what her mom told her was a typical rich man. He's very mansplainy, he talks over people, he goes on vacations all the time, he talks about himself more than others. So when Hannah saw him, she felt like he was just showing off again. She doesn't understand why the people with the most money always shove it in the face of those that don't have money. So in her mind, while she didn't mean to say it quite so loudly, she still says the statement, "must be fucking nice," more as a protectional barrier for herself. Because if she were to feel those feelings of guilt and shame in the workplace, she might fall apart and risk her job. Her behavior is purely about survival. Should Hannah be less reactive and work on her triggers? Yes, absolutely. Your trauma is your responsibility to heal. We can't go walking around with a chip on our shoulder. There's absolutely consequences for that. But that's not to say that people we see exhibiting such behaviors aren't already in therapy and healing and doing all of the things to try to get better. Maybe they're just doing their best right now, in this moment. But is it Hannah's coworker's responsibility to be more trauma aware, or at least go ask if she's okay? Yes. Look, we're all on this planet together. We're all coexisting, and we should be here to help each other. If someone does something that rubs you the wrong way, instead of getting mad and reactive yourself, get empathetic instead. There's always more pain beneath the surface of the human mind than any one person could anticipate. So be that empathetic coworker that goes up to Hannah privately and says, "Hey girl, I saw you got really bothered by Frank in there, and I know you don't usually react to him so intensely, so what's going on? How are you feeling today? Do you need anything?" Let her talk to you and tell you how she feels. Help her turn it into a more positive place. Now, I'm not saying to be her crutch and take care of every problem moving forward. She has her own responsibility to heal herself. But you can be a support system. You can be a friend. Even if she ends up quitting the job and you never see her again, the fact that one coworker at one point in time didn't treat her like a burden, but instead treated her like a human being deserving of compassion, that might just stick in her brain forever. It might change her life. We have to stop treating people who don't follow the societal norm of behavior as weird or unworthy or unwanted. No one is perfect all the time. No one. And by being compassionate towards others and helping them heal their traumas, that's how we really grow and evolve into everything we were meant to be. Not by judging them not by talking behind their backs or laughing at their behavior. Okay, so that was how trauma can change the brain. Now let's dig into how trauma can affect the nervous system. Just a little disclaimer here. I'm absolutely not a medical doctor either. While I'll do my best to explain this as accurately as possible, there may be things you'd understand differently if you read it for yourself. So, as always, I've got the references in the podcast description. So, in a perfectly healthy body, this is how the physical process of your body responding to stress would go. You would sense some sort of threat through one of your 5 senses, and that information would be sent to the amygdala for it to decide if what you sense poses a danger to you. If the amygdala decides this is a danger, it then sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is like your brain's command center. It's where your brain communicates with the rest of your body through the autonomic nervous system, which is what controls all of the body functions you don't have to think about. So your breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, all of that stuff. It's divided into 2 components, the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. And these 2 are complete opposites of each other. The sympathetic nervous system is what you go into in a fight or flight situation. It gives you a burst of energy so you can deal with any danger. The parasympathetic nervous system is where you are if there are no threats. It's like your rest mode nervous system. So when the hypothalamus receives the distress signal from the amygdala, it activates the sympathetic nervous system by sending signals through the autonomic nerves to the adrenal glands, which then start pumping adrenaline throughout the bloodstream. This makes your heart beat faster so you can quickly push blood to your major organs and muscles, which makes your blood pressure go up. You start breathing more rapidly, and your lungs literally start collecting more oxygen that can be sent to your brain. The rush of adrenaline also triggers a release of stored glucose and fats into the bloodstream to supply your body with extra energy. And all of this happens so quickly, most people don't even realize it's happening. Like, you know in movies how someone can just turn around, see a car about to hit them, and instantly move out of the way? Well, in that situation, this entire process would have taken place before the person's visual center even realized it was a car about to hit them. After the surge of adrenaline, the hypothalamus will activate what is called the HPA axis, which is made up of the hypothalamus, the pituitary glands, and the adrenal glands. The HPA axis undergoes a process where it utilizes hormones to continuously pump cortisol through the body until the threat passes, in order to keep the body on high alert. Then, when the threat passes, the hypothalamus activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which causes cortisol and adrenaline levels to drop, and the body goes back into rest mode. But when a person is living under chronic stress from post-traumatic stress, the hypothalamus keeps the sympathetic nervous system activated, and that survival mode is left on. This means that there are now increased levels of cortisol in the body, which in short bursts can boost your immunity and limit inflammation. But if cortisol is regularly in the body can get accustomed to it, which then lowers the person's immunity and can increase inflammation. This can lead to increased blood pressure, sleep disturbances, weight gain, high blood pressure, and weaker bones. But here's the thing. Having your sympathetic nervous system engaged 24/7 is not supposed to be happening. Think of it like a car. If you sit there and rev your car's engine nonstop for months or years, it's going to start breaking. Similarly, if our sympathetic nervous system is engaged nonstop for months or years, it's going to start breaking down. And that's when autonomic nervous system dysfunction or dysautonomia conditions can arise. Not all dysautonomia conditions are caused specifically by post-traumatic stress. They can be caused from other things like infections, COVID, physical injury, or autoimmune conditions. But they can all be caused by post-traumatic stress too. These conditions are things like postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, neurocardiogenic syncope, orthostatic hypertension, and inappropriate sinus tachycardia. There are a total of 15 dysautonomia conditions. For today, I'm not going to get into each one in depth, but rather an overall outlook on dysautonomia conditions. The point I want to express here is that dysautonomia is still being studied and the symptoms can vary person to person. And if you do feel like you have these symptoms, definitely start your healthcare journey now. It can be a challenge getting appropriately diagnosed. There are a wide range of symptoms that can come with dysautonomia. I am not going to share them all, but there is an article linked in the references that has a full list if you're curious. Physically, this can look like dizziness, fatigue, fainting, heart palpitations, nausea or vomiting, fast or slow heart rate, irregular heart rhythm, migraines, constipation or diarrhea, chest pain or discomfort, and trouble sleeping. Cognitively, it can show up as brain fog, memory issues, and difficulty focusing. And emotionally, it can include anxiety, mood swings, and feeling constantly on edge. Some people experience just a few of these symptoms, others experience many. It really depends on the person. I know I said I wasn't going to get into each one individually, but I do still want to share my personal experience in case it may be of help to someone. Personally, I have POTS, or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I developed it, or at least started to really notice it, in 2019, 2020. I've had a long period of significant traumas, so it's likely that is a condition formed by exactly what we've been talking about here, prolonged sympathetic nervous system engagement. It took several years to figure out what I even had. I just started getting really dizzy when I stood up. Have you ever had your vision partially black out when you stood up too fast? It's kind of like that, but more intense, and it lasts a little longer. I'd had that happen before when I was a kid. I was sick a lot and sometimes struggled to stay hydrated, and so I would have to go to the hospital for just like IV fluids every so often. Then after I did the fluids, I'd be all better and feel fine. So that's kind of what I thought was happening at first, and I went to the hospital and they said everything looked good and gave me an IV bag. I felt better while I was there, so I probably was dehydrated. So I went home and I went to bed, and the next day it happened all over again. But they had checked me all out and checked my heart out and said I was fine, so I tried to stay hydrated and just tough it out. And then it got worse. I couldn't stay standing without almost passing out and falling. I started getting dizzy even just while sitting down, and my heart felt like it was pounding out of my chest nonstop. My chest would even get sore from it, so something was definitely wrong. I went back to the hospital and told them what I was experiencing. They did an EKG and said my heart was tachycardic, meaning it was beating faster than it should be while resting, but that my heart structure was fine and I was probably just dehydrated and having a mild panic attack. So they gave me more IV fluids and sent me home. I spent another day or two essentially bedridden and then was just like, no, fuck this. I know my body and this is not right. I mean, I was so hydrated, my pee was clear. So dehydration and panic was not the issue there. So I went back to the hospital for the third time, and they again said I was tachycardic, but my heart was fine. They tried to give me another IV bag and send me on my way, but I was very persistent that something was not right. So they eventually referred me to a cardiologist. I had to wait a long time for the appointment. And when I went to the cardiology appointment, the doctor tried to say the same thing, that it's likely from stress. I told him I was positive it was not from stress. I'd been much more stressed in my life. And so he went ahead and ordered a heart monitor for me to wear for 3 days or something like that to further assess my heart. I wore the device and went back for my follow-up appointment. And the doctor did not even show up. He sent the nurse practitioner instead. And she told me that I was tachycardic, but my heart was fine, and to follow up with my doctor about anti-anxiety meds. So I just cried. Then I had to pick myself back up, and I'm like, okay, let's do this again. And I tried another cardiologist. This cardiologist did order a longer heart monitor and some other tests after my insistence, but ultimately ended up saying the exact same thing all over again. So I tried to get the opposite of my first two doctors, and I found a different cardiologist who specialized in electrophysiology and was a woman. She's the one who eventually gave me the diagnosis of POTS, though she never really explained to me what it was, and I ended up having to see another cardiologist to get an explanation and know what to do. Ultimately, though, I'm grateful for figuring it out, but after waiting all those months between appointments, between tests, between waiting for new doctor availability, everything, it took like 2.5 years to get a solid diagnosis. So that's why earlier in the episode I said that if you do experience this, jump on figuring it out as quickly as possible. From what I've heard in various Facebook support groups I'm in, it's a pretty common experience, unfortunately. The good news is that there are things that we can do about it. In the past couple of years, I've been perfecting my exercise routine, my diet. I've been going to counseling and slowly healing past traumas. And I'm trying to get into more somatic type therapies to really free up my nervous system. By doing what I have, I've gone from being completely disabled by this condition to managing this condition. I went from not being able to walk up a single flight of stairs to being able to do up to 10 minutes on the stair climber at the gym. My symptoms like dizziness and the almost passing out stuff, I've gotten to be almost non-existent during the daytime. It does get worse at night, but not nearly to the level that it was when it all started. I am still struggling with the fatigue. That part's a bit of a bitch, I'm not going to lie. But I'm living my life again. So if you're at the beginning of your journey, don't stop. You are going to make it, I promise you. It takes a lot of persistence, a lot of exercise training, and a lot of mental resilience and healthy eating habits, but it is possible. If I could do it, so can you. And I'm excited to start looking into somatic healing, exploring meditation and mindfulness, and really journaling out some hidden pain. I think by doing this, I can heal even more. And who knows, maybe I can heal completely. There's a long way to go in understanding trauma's full effects on the human body, but the understanding we're gaining now is so enlightening and freeing. Knowledge truly is power. If we can understand where our minds or our bodies are going wrong, then we can figure out a way to fix it, to improve it. Have you ever had a moment in your life where you learned something and you just felt like, damn, I wish I knew that sooner? That's why we always have to keep learning. When you're faced with an obstacle with your own mind or body that seems unsolvable, don't give up. Keep pushing and keep learning as much as you can. Eventually, the answers that you need are going to find you. Everything changes, remember? And for those of you that may be suffering from other mental or physical conditions, whether it's related to trauma or not, maybe ones that aren't necessarily curable, like some of the dysautonomia ones, I just want to say, your life makes a difference in this world. And as much as I hate that you're suffering, I honor you, and I'm so grateful for the change and the impact you've undoubtedly made in this world. Every life, no matter how short, has a purpose. Even if you may be in that part of your life where you can't see anything good that you've brought to the world, I want to encourage you to reassess that belief. Even the most terrible events can have something good come from them. Originally, I wanted to end this episode with a little guided meditation to help us activate our parasympathetic nervous system, that at-rest nervous system. But I wanted the meditation to be more easily accessible, so rather than put it at the end of this episode, I'm going to make the next episode be a full guided meditation. So definitely go check that out. For now, let's take a nice deep breath in through our nose, down into our belly, and out through our mouths. Take a moment to be in the here and now, a place where you're safe, a place where you are loved and accepted. If that doesn't sound like your usual life, then know that is true here in this space, in this podcast community. Now I want you to think of one thing that you are grateful for. Let that gratitude wash over your entire being. And say to yourself aloud, if you can, I am worthy, I am loved, I am a badass, and I will do whatever it is that I set my mind to. And now keep saying it until you fully believe it. No, I'm kidding, but at least know that I believe in you. All right, guys, I'll talk to you next time. Bye.